Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our new home claim forms webinar presented to you by the Department of Metropolitan Development. We're going to go ahead and get started, seeing that it's a little bit past the hour, and looks like most of you are already joined in. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lydia C.B. Watson. I am the Home Grant Program Coordinator, and I also listed the contact information for the Home Grant Program Manager, which is Katie Bannon, and I also listed Amber Hayes' contact, who is the Home Grant Analyst. Before we get started, can you please mute your phones? You can do this by hitting mute on the phone, or you can press *1. So I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay. Please remember this presentation is being recorded for later view. You can re-watch this presentation on our YouTube channel, and the link is listed below. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, we encourage you to type your question in the chat, and we will address them at designated times. Who should attend? All project sponsors and their team with current home awards. And the topics that we're going to cover will be a review of the claims process, the new claim forms, completing a claim correctly, and common mistakes. All right, let's begin with the claims process overview. So the first step is the RCA, which is the Rehabilitation Construction Approval Form, and that is issued by the city. After you have put together the written specs, bids are received and approved by the DMD rehab specialist, you can then incur expenses as the project sponsor. After that, the project sponsor will request partial or final completion inspection from the rehab specialist. After doing so, the project sponsor will then submit their claim for approval, which can take up to 30 days. However, it is our goal to process these claims within 2 weeks. After you submit the claim is approved and sent to accounts payable with a timeline of disbursement up to 2 weeks. Then after disbursement, finally the claim is processed and the check is mailed. And now please allow up to 1 week for that. Here are the new home claim forms. You can click this link and that will take you to the Google Drive where you will find the new home claim forms and other relevant forms. Once you click that link, this is what you should see. You will see a Google Drive that gives you the option of clicking several different forms. You can see in the left corner the claim forms are in an Excel workbook. All right, let's begin with the cover sheet, and that's the claims checklist. Please note that these accompany all claims, and if you want to avoid delayed payment, it's important that you use this sheet as a tool to ensure all necessary documents are submitted. And please make note that this form must have a signature and date. All right, looking a little closer at the claim form, this form must be on organization's letterhead. Please provide the authorized original signature and not a photocopy. And then also we would like for you to provide a printed name and to provide an email address. And we will let you know why this is so in the slides coming. All right, this claim form asks you to list the invoice number. The invoice number is the last 2 digits of the grant year, the last 4 digits of your purchase order number, and then the number of the claim. And below we have written an example. So as you can see, It's date 17-1234-01. This would be for a 2017 grant, purchase order number 1300001234, and this is the first claim for the purchase order number. The purchase order number is the number that was provided with the contract. And then we list an example below, as you can see, 13000, and then there will be 4 digits following. We also need you to put the contract period in. The contract period should match the date of execution and end date of the contract and any amendments. So it is important to know what we mean when we say the execution date and the end date. It will not always be the beginning of the year of the award and the end of that year. So the execution date will be the date of the last signature on this page. And then the end date will be what is written in the contract. The claim form also lists the coverage period, and this is the range of dates when the expenses was when the expenses occurred. So you want to make sure that this coverage period is within the contract period. Lines in the description section should match the work. The developer fee should be on its own description line, claimed upon sale of the unit or rental of units. The address is the location of the project. Remember, there is one address per claim. Address should match what is listed in the executed contracts or amendments. HUD tracks by address, so one address per claim helps us in HUD reconcile our accounts. You will also include the date of the claim. You will enter your company federal ID number, and then you will include the amount of the claim. Right. Our next form is the purchase order accounting report, which is the summary of expenses in the purchase order. The top data fields will auto-populate from the claim form that we just went over. The address column should include all addresses under the purchase order / contract and amounts previously claimed. The budget category and budget amount are items and amounts that match the executed contract. The current amount to be claimed is the total amount being claimed in each budget line and is manually entered here. The total prior amount claimed is manually entered and updated with each claim. And the amount claimed to date and balance available should auto-populate or calculate. The next form is the detail of expenses for this claim. This contains all expenses that are requested for reimbursement. So as you can see, again, the top data fields will auto-populate. However, for the date, check number, budget category, payee, and claim amount, you will have to enter those manually. This description you will also enter manually, and it identifies the cause for the expense. Our next form is the details of salaries and wages. This sheet summarizes all timesheets included in the shuttle operating and INHP down payment assistance claims. Again, the top data fields and current amounts a claim will auto-populate. However, the title, position, employee name, total number of hours, eligible hours, hourly wage, and the amount claimed to date, you will have to enter those manually. Our next form is the MebeWeB Section 3 participation form. This form should be included with all claims. Be sure to check whether or not you are a Section 3 business on the form. Also, provide names for all prime contractors and subcontractors paid with this specific claim only. Is certified with the City of Indianapolis Office of Minority and Women Business Development. Please list the amount under the category they belong. It is also important that you note, even if you do not have a contractor or subcontractor that falls under any of these categories, you still want to choose the non-WeB Section 3 column to fill out. And again, this is just listing what I just said. If any of the contractors are not belonging to these categories, you're going to fill out the non-column. All information on this sheet will need to be entered manually. The City of Indianapolis has a goal for contracts to comprise of 15% minority business enterprises, 8% with women, 3% veterans, and 1% disability-owned businesses. The city requires DMD to report this information monthly. So this is why we ask that you fill out this information. On this slide, we will go over proof of expense and payment. So some of the items that are would justify proof of expense and a payment would be invoices, receipts for materials purchased, photocopies of checks, Prosciutto operating or INHP down payment assistance, program delivery, timesheet signed by supervisor and employee. And we want to make a note for faster claim processing. Please match copies of checks with invoices in the order they appear on the detail of expenses sheet. The RCA, or Rehabilitation Construction Approval Form, is what we have here. It's not issued by DMD until the environmental review is complete for the address. You also want to make sure that you fill out the RFP, Request for Proposal, the RFQ, Request for Qualifications, Specifications, Cost Estimates, and bids must be approved and signed off on by a DMD rehab specialist. This is not required for claims that are for developer fee and or down payment assistance only. The partial payment form should be submitted with a claim if a partial amount of the budget for an address is requested. The form here will need to be completed manually. This form will also need the signature and approval of a city rehab specialist before it is submitted with the claim. The final payment request form should be submitted with the claim if the final amount of the budget for an address is requested. The form will need to be completed manually. This form will also need the signature and approval of a city rehab specialist before it is submitted with the claim. Completion documents also need to be submitted before final claims can be paid, covered in a separate webinar. The completion report will be covered in a separate webinar. The G702 form may be submitted in lieu of partial or final payment request forms. This must be signed by an architect. The Davis-Bacon payment request form is required if Davis-Bacon wages apply to the project. This must be signed by the Davis-Bacon compliance monitor. A copy of the past lead clearance is required if lead is an issue and with final payment claim for an address. The certificate of completion of work specifications is only required when final construction claim for an address, with a final construction claim for an address. It must be signed by a DMD rehab specialist. Now we will go through a brief list of common issues or mistakes. Incorrect contract period dates. Home contracts do not begin until the contract execution date. Expenses are not within contract period date, so it's important that the expenses are not before or after the contract period date. Expenses were incurred before the RCA date, so that's the rehabilitation and construction approval. You don't want to incur expenses until this form is approved. Documentation is not sufficient for approval. So again, it's just important that you go over the checklist and even some of the points that we have previously made here to make sure that your documentation is sufficient. The claim form is not on organization's letterhead or does not include the correct mail-to address. The more common issues or mistakes that we have found is that the claim form is not signed with the original signature. So if we are sent a photocopy, we will ask that you resubmit with the original signature. Or if we have to make corrections on that form, we would also have you make those corrections and resubmit with original signature. Another issue is that the MEBI-WEBI form, Section 3 participation form is not completed. And again, I'll emphasize, even if contractors are not a MEBI-WEBI business, you still want to fill out the form. The purchase order accounting report lists incorrect dollar amounts. All applicable documents listed on the home claim submission checklist are not included with the claim. And lastly, not numbering the claims within the invoice number by number of claim submissions under the purchase order. So it's important that you understand that when you're numbering the claims, it's the number of claims under the purchase order and not per address. How to submit a claim. You can either mail to the City of Indianapolis, Department of Metropolitan Development, attention, Audrey, 200 East Washington Avenue, Suite 2042, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46203. Or you can walk it into our office and give to the office assistant up front. We are located on the 20th floor of the City County building. Audrey will email a date stamped claim cover sheet to the contact person to indicate receipt of claim. So that is why it's important that you fill out a email address on that first form. If it's a final claim, please submit a completion report along with the claim. Are there any questions? So I'm going to take a look here to see if there were any questions asked during the presentation. Just give me a moment while I pull that up.
Okay, it does not look like there are any questions. Feel free, if you do have questions as you're trying to fill out these forms, to reach out to me, Katie, or Lydia, or Amber as well. We're all pretty well versed in these forms, having made some updates this year to try to address some just difficulties with the forms or things that weren't matching up properly. We're always open to doing that. Even before you submit the claim, you can feel free to email us and we can, take a quick look for something you have a question about.
And I also wanted to add that starting Monday is our expectation that these forms will be used. So after Monday, if we do get submissions with the older claim forms, we will send them back and ask that you resubmit on the new home claim forms.
Okay, not seeing any more questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. As we mentioned, we will post this on the DMD's YouTube site, so you always feel free to go back and take a look again at the webinar, and we'll also post the PowerPoint on our Google Drive.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day and the weekend.